Okay.
Okay, my name is Phil Wong, and I'm here with a class for the MAG-20, Massad Ayoob Group 20 range class. This is a class that's being put on by Gator Farm Tactical, which is an affiliated training organization with the Massad Ayoob Group. And me personally, I'm one of the Massad Ayoob Group staff instructors. What we're about to do is shoot the pace setter drill for the MAG-20 range class. The pace setter drill is basically the instructor shooting the qualification course of fire to model that qualification for the students. So the students will have a chance to see, get an idea of how they shoot for the qualification. I'm making this video for a somewhat personal reason. Okay, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be shooting a Glock 19 pistol, 9mm Glock 19. It's a Gen 2 pistol, and as you can probably see, it's completely stock slide release lever, stock factory sights. This, of course, is an older Generation 2 as opposed to Generation 3 and Generation 4, grooves and straps. I'm using this particular gun as part of the project. It came to mind after criticism of the New York Police Department and their choice of Glock 19, specifically the trigger configuration of duty pistols. Now this pistol is set up in stock configuration, and it has a standard connector, which is typically referred to as a 5.5-pound connector, and a standard trigger spring. Okay, and what happens is that with the standard trigger spring, there's a very light amount of resistance or take-up. And I can demonstrate that to you right here. That take-up stage right there is very light. It only requires maybe a pound of 2 pounds worth of pressure. It's very light. Okay. The New York trigger spring requires significantly more pressure in the early stage of the take-up. And the New York 2 trigger spring that NYPD specifies is spec'd for a total trigger pull weight of approximately 12 pounds. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to actually get my bag of parts. Okay, so the trigger spring in question which department uses is the orange NY-2 trigger spring. And like I said, that's spec'd to give a 12-pound total pull. And that's contrasted to the stock trigger spring, which gives a very, very light resistance in the initial portion of the trigger pull. So I have a detail strip this to install this NY-2 trigger spring.
find our base for doing it.
Another thing I'll call your attention to is the Glock trigger connector. And this also affects the weight of the trigger pull, because as the trigger bar travels rearward and as the cruciform contacts the striker tail and cocks the striker, at the very last portion of travel, this portion of the trigger bar contacts the sloped angle on the connector, and at that point it cams the trigger bar downwards, as you see. And by camming the trigger bar downwards, it releases this cruciform from the striker tail and allows the cocked striker to fly forward. Okay, that's important because the angle of the connector actually affects the weight of the pull. And the sharper the angle is on the connector, or the more acute the angle is on the connector, the heavier the pull weight. The shallower the angle, the less the final pull weight. Okay? Glock makes a plus connector with a steeper angle, and that gives an 8-pound weight, give or take, to release the striker. They also make a minus connector, which gives, give or take, 3.5 to 4 pounds of weight before the striker releases. And the configuration that NYPD uses is a standard 5-pound connector plus the NY-2 trigger spring. And I will show the camera right here. This is a standard connector because there are no markings on the back. If it was a 3.5-pound connector, it would have a minus sign stamped into it. If it was an 8-pound connector, it would have a plus sign stamped into it. So at this point, I will assemble the pistol with this standard connector and this NY2 trigger spring.
Open and empty all firearms. Remove all magazines
instead
and ammunition.
of the stock.
When your firearms are completely unloaded, actions open. Please remove your targets and tape. Anything else you'll need off your shooting table. Step behind the yellow safety line.
With just a little bit of oil on there.
Shooters, do not touch or handle any firearms or anything on or around the tables. That area will be a no-touch zone. Line is safe. You may go forward of the red firing line. Check, set up, and retrieve your targets. The opportunity to get your empty cases in the gravel area. No activity around the table during the ceasefire.
See? So it's twice as difficult for me.
Give the slide just a touch of oil. Okay, so the gun's functioning, and we've tested the trigger pull. And I'm guessing it's about 10 to 11 pounds. And as you saw, we installed the stock New York 2 trigger spring plus the stock 5-pound connector. The total trigger pull should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 pounds. That is what the NYPD specs the trigger pull to be on their issued duty weapons. Okay, and if somebody would like to come up and verify that this is in fact heavier than normal. Chamber, magazine well. Okay, what do you think? Heavier. Okay. So we've done as much as we can do on video to show you that this is in fact a heavier than stock New York PD spec NY-2 12-pound trigger pull. So what we're going to do once we get clear from the range is we're going to go hot and we're going to shoot this qualification with this gun instead of my normal carry gun, which is also a Glock 19, but I personally prefer a slightly lighter trigger, weighing about 6 pounds with a NY-1 trigger spring plus a 3.5-pound factory connector. And this is a personal project for me because I've been hearing several times about how the heavy NY-2 trigger spring is detrimental to the marksmanship of NYPD officers. But I don't, or try not to take anything for granted. So I wanted to test that out for myself and see whether or not the heavier pull really was a detriment or an impediment.
Line safety officer is downrange safe. All shooters stay behind the red firing line. Keep your muzzles pointed downrange at all times.
Not NYPD
Remember the case,
ammunition,
in that case, that's your shooting
ammunition.
tables.
This is federal
With your muzzles pointed downrange.
9 BP
Line is ready. Shooters, you may now load and
plus
commence
P
fire.
plus loading
Next break will be in 15
of
minutes.
duty ammunition, and it's meant to be one of the heavier recoiling 9mm loadings. It's not exactly what the NYPD issues, but I wasn't able to get Spear 124 grain gold dot hollow point ammunition on short notice. So we're making do and hopefully substituting an equivalent substitute. We're taking this opportunity to shoot the MAG-20 qualification course of fire simply because it's a qualification course of fire that's meant to be equivalent to law enforcement standards. And we're going to try and shoot it with equivalent duty ammunition. We're going to fire 6-round strings because that's what the qualification calls for. So I'm going to ask one of our fellow students to back me up and help assist me. And we're also going to have one of my fellow Massad Ayoob Group instructors, Kowalski, also shoot at the same time, kind of so that you can get an idea of how my performance suffers or doesn't suffer compared to another instructor with an equivalent amount of experience and skill. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, the first range is going to be at 4 yards. What we will do is load with 6 rounds. Carefully transfer the pistol to our non-dominant or weak hand and fire 6 rounds. Non-dominant hand only. Timer, give us a signal. We have 8 seconds.
Stand by. Fire.
Okay, we're done.
Oh, ceasefire.
Okay, at this point we unload, transfer to the strong hand, reload with 6 more rounds and holster a loaded pistol. At this stage, we will fire 6 shots, strong hand only, with our hands starting on the holster of the pistol. We will have 8 seconds to fire 6 shots, strong hand only. Timer.
Stand by. Fire. Did you figure out how this thing works? Cease fire.
Okay. We all made the times? All right. We'll go ahead and reload and holster a loaded pistol. But that concludes the shooting at the 4-yard line. Next stage will be at the 7-yard line.
What do we hit? How long?
Okay, for this stage, the target's at 7 yards. Fire 6 shots, reload, and fire 6 more shots at a distance of 7 yards from a 2-handed standing position, starting with the gun in the holster. We will have 25 seconds total to fire 12 shots with 1 reload. Okay, timer, signal when we're ready.
Stand by. Fire.
Okay, unload.
Cease fire.
Everybody made the times? We're good. Okay, we'll go ahead and reload in preparation for the next stage.
I don't have the stages memorized, so I don't know what I need.
Okay, this is going to be 18 rounds, 3 iterations of 6, and at the 10-yard line. So we can move our targets. Okay, so this next stage, target is at 10 yards. We're going to shoot from a position called the cover crouch, then reload and switch to high kneeling, reload and switch to low kneeling. We'll fire 6 shots per string for a total of 18 rounds, 10 yards distance. And the total time allotted is 75 seconds. Okay, everybody good? Everybody ready? Timer, whenever you're ready.
Stand by. Fire. $60 seconds.
Hand me 6 loose rounds. Make sure there's no 40s in there. I'll figure it out soon enough.
Cease fire.
Actually, now I'm glad we're doing this. And our shooting's not that bad when compared to theirs. We're all right on par with them.
So at this point, any
I'm set.
Okay.
These are the last ones, so you can rest easy now.
Okay, stage description. Target is at 15 yards. We'll fire from the holster, draw and fire 6 rounds standing from the Weaver stance. Reload on our own initiative and change to a modified Weaver or Chapman stance. Reload after 6 rounds, fire our final 6 rounds from an isosceles stance. Our total time allotted is 90 seconds. Everybody understand? Okay, timer.
Stand by. Fire! Ten seconds. Clear. Ceasefire.
Okay, everybody made the allotted times. Let's go ahead and check our targets. Okay, so what we have here is a total of 60 shots and maximum 5-point value per shot inside the A box for a maximum total score of 300 points. We have 1, 2, 3 shots in the C zone. Those are down 1 point per, so that takes us down to 297. We have 2 shots in the D zone. Those are 2 points down, so from 297 we go down to 295, 293. And that's for Brian, shooting a Smith & Wesson Model 65.
Model 64, double action only.
Double action only, 38 special. Okay? Now let's take a look at my performance with the NYPD-spec, or as close to it as I can get on short notice, Glock 19. Okay? Again, 60 shots total. Total possible maximum score, 300 points. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 shots in the C zone. So that's down 1 point per shot. So that gives me 292 out of 300. Okay. And again, that's with a NYPD-spec Glock 19, stock factory sights, stock slide release, roughly 10 to 12 pound trigger pull, just like what the NYPD issues. So my point is that if you know how to shoot, you can still shoot even with a 12-pound trigger. And on a more personal note, at the time of this filming, which is March 4th, 2016, in New York City, there was a trial recently concluded of former NYPD officer Peter Liang, L-I-A-N-G. Okay? Peter Liang had just about 11 months on the job as an NYPD officer when he was patrolling in a housing project in the New York City area. He was conducting what they call a vertical patrol, which is basically patrolling the stairwell of the housing project. And because he felt that it was a hazardous environment and he was afraid of being ambushed in the stairwell, he actually had his duty Glock 19 drawn and in his hand while he was walking up and down the stairwell. At one point, he was startled by a loud noise or by one of the stairwell doors slamming, and his finger contacted the trigger of his Glock, and he fired a shot. That shot, unfortunately, ricocheted off one of the walls of the stairwell and actually went down a floor and struck and killed a man named Akai Gurley. Peter Liang was charged with manslaughter in connection with this incident. And he was in fact found guilty about 2 weeks ago. And he is awaiting sentencing at the time of this filming, March 4th, 2016. One of the key points in the jury deliberation was the jury actually held and tested the trigger and pulled the trigger themselves of his duty Glock 19. And the jurors pretty much unanimously felt that Peter Liang's trigger, which was measured by forensics technicians to weigh 11.5 pounds, they all felt that that trigger was too heavy to pull by accident. They felt that a deliberate intention was required to pull a trigger that heavy. And that was part of the deliberations that led to their verdict of guilty on the charge of manslaughter for Officer Liang, who has now been terminated from the NYPD and again is awaiting sentencing at this time. So this was another reason why I wanted to do this test and why I wanted to do this video. So thank you very much for bearing with me, and I hope that this was helpful and informative and instructive.
At your shooting table with your muzzle